Hello and welcome to Cryptid Unscripted, where we look at sites in the UK where cryptid creatures have been reported and we don't have a script. It really is that simple. For the second video that I've done for this channel, we are back in North East Lincolnshire. As you can see, I'm on a farm track through a field with some bushes next to me, and the animal we're looking at in this video is a big cat. Now, I didn't actually see this big cat, I just had a few experiences that told me it was here. And we're going back to September 2023 with this one, so it's a personal experience. I'm not going to say exactly where it is. I don't think the big cat in question is actually still around here, but just in case it is, I'm not going to reveal the exact location beyond it's in North East Lincolnshire. Just in case, I don't want people marauding around trying to shoot it or take pictures of it or disturbing it, etc. Just over there is a ditch which will become significant, well, not really, but it's potentially where a big cat would go and have a drink of water. And as you can see, this track goes up a slight rise, and I'll see you towards the top of it. So yeah, we're coming towards the top of the rise here, and later on in the story I'll tell you about a footprint that I found, and that was just on the track here, in about this area. It's not here anymore, obviously. I'm doing this in May 2025, so it's a couple of years ago. But yeah, this is where I found the footprint that I'll discuss later on. So as you get over the crest of the rise on the track, you come to this path here. It's just going across, and you can see across there is a woodland. That is a significant part of the story we're going to tell. But the story starts about half a mile, 3/4 of a mile over there. Now it might look like I'm in the middle of nowhere, but I'm not. Across there, about half a mile, as I say, about somewhere, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile across there is a main road that runs along the edge of a built-up area, and that happens to be the road that I walk down to go to and from work. Now in about early to mid-September 2023, I was walking home from work about 1:30 in the morning along that road, and I could hear an unearthly screaming noise coming from across here. It was an animal noise. It wasn't human, so I wasn't massively concerned, but it was really, really weird. It sounded a little bit like foxes fighting, and it may well have been foxes fighting, but it sounded a lot louder than you would expect, and it also went on for a very, very long time. I could hear it for at least probably 25 minutes or so until I actually got home and shut the front door, and I was quite glad to close the front door on that particular night. As it happened, in the week or so afterwards, I had a lot of shifts that I was working in the daytime, so I was actually at home in the evening. And about that time of year, it was getting dark, about between 7 and 8, just after 8 o'clock perhaps in the evening. So towards dusk, I set off with my dog Alfie, who is here. And he was also just had a poo, just as we arrived at the filming site, so I've got to carry that around with me as well. Yeah, so I got my dog and I walked him around here quite a few nights running. He was in seventh heaven. He was getting a second full walk every single day. And for the first couple of nights we didn't see anything. We came up this track and went along this path through the fields, and then you can weave your way back to the main road that I mentioned. You turn left and then follow the path around. You can get back to the main road, and that's what we did. So the first couple of nights we came, we didn't see anything. However, on the third night, which was Tuesday the 19th of September 2023, we came up this track about 8 o'clock at night, and before you even got to the top you could hear the birds making a really loud noise from in that wood opposite. They were really, really squawking and carrying on. It carried for a long, long way. It was very, very loud indeed. Now, as you might be aware, for various cryptids such as dogmen and Bigfoot and creatures like that, the birds tend to go quiet. The first video I did for this channel was looking at the site where a Bigfoot had been seen, and I kept mentioning that I was sure it wasn't around because the birds were singing quite happily in the trees. So for Bigfoot, for dogmen and things like that, they tend to go quiet. For big cats, they tend to go one of two ways. They either go quiet or they make a real load of noise, and it seems more common actually that they make a lot of noise, and that's what they were doing. I think it's got two purposes. First of all, to act as a warning between the birds that there's something there, and also perhaps to try and frighten off the creature itself. So they were making a noise, so we stopped here and we looked. We couldn't see anything. As you can see, within the tree line it's quite dark, and that's today in full daylight. I'm doing this about 9 o'clock in the morning in May, as I say. So you can't see anything in the tree line now. I mean, you can imagine when it's getting dark out here that it was even darker. But after we'd been still for a couple of minutes, the birds at the right hand end of the wood there suddenly flew up into the air, and they came out across this field about halfway or so, and then they turned for 180 degrees and they went back to the trees and landed where they'd been, still making this horrible noise all the way through, this squawking, carrying on noise all the way through it. But they went back to the trees, As they landed, the birds in the section to the left of them, as we're looking at it, took off and did the same thing. And then when they landed, the birds to the left of them did the same, and it was like a Mexican wave of angry, irritated birds all the way down. I got the impression that something was moving from right to left within the tree line, but I couldn't see anything. And we stood and looked for ages, and I did something really stupid. I allowed it to go dark, so we were standing here in the dark. Now, it wasn't a problem in itself, because obviously your eyes are just to the light, and I know the paths. We walk around here quite a lot, we have done for years, but obviously I'm thinking there's an apex predator over there, and I'm now out here in the dark with the dog, and for a bit, when you turn off this little path you can see here, I'd have my back to it. So it wasn't my finest hour. Luckily nothing happened, nothing untoward, and we're still here to tell the tale. Next night we came back, Wednesday the 20th of September 2023. The birds again were making the same kind of noise. We could hear it before we even got to the top of the track there. But as we got to this field just in front of us, there were a couple of deer. Now here is an aside, because if you ask probably 95% of the people who use this area, and it is quite popular with dog walkers, with joggers, with just walkers, with people taking shortcuts between various local villages. A lot of people use it in the daytime, and if you ask 95% of them, probably even more than that, they would tell you there's no deer in this area. You have to come in the very early morning around dawn, or around dusk in the late evening to see them. And even then, most of the time you come at those times, you won't see one. So they're very, very rare to see. But they are here, they do live around here. So there were two deer in the field. I thought obviously they'd run off at a rate of knots, as they always do when they see people, especially if you've got a dog. I've always got the dog on the lead, because just in case there are deer about. But they didn't, they just stayed where they were. They stayed in front of us. They were probably actually, if I just move up a little bit, they were probably just here, just in front of me, just where the land drops down into the field. They looked back nervously at us, but they didn't move. They just kept looking, so I stopped. I didn't want to scare them too much, and they just looked at us just long enough to make sure we'd stop moving, and then they went back to staring over there, and they were looking in that direction absolutely fixatedly. They were staring across there, and I followed the gaze. I couldn't see what they were looking at, and we all just stood there. They kept looking back at the deer every so often just to make sure that we weren't moving, but I got the impression that whatever was over there, they were far more scared of it than they were of us. And we all just stood there for probably 10 minutes. It was a bit bizarre, really. Eventually, whatever it was they were looking at must have moved off. It must have got bored. I'm assuming it could see us beyond the deer, and it just realised we weren't going anywhere, so it must have gone off. I couldn't see what it was. There were no crops in this field at the time, but across there, where the little hedgerow is, there was long grass, and I'm assuming that it was in that, and I couldn't see it, no matter how much I stared looking at it. And eventually, after about 10 minutes, the deer felt confident enough to move off. They've moved off quite slowly. They didn't run off like they normally would, but they moved off quite slowly in that direction across the field, looking across there every so often just to make sure nothing was happening. And I stood and watched them until they got round the corner there, round the corner of the trees and out of sight, really. And then I moved off because it was getting dark and I didn't want to get stuck in the dark field again. But yeah, we couldn't see anything. A few days later, Saturday the 23rd, I came in the morning just as it was getting light, about 7:25 in the morning, and just across there, in that kind of direction where the trees are, we heard a loud scream, like a puma scream. I've listened to the noise of pumas screaming on the internet, and that's what it sounded like. It sounded like a puma, just one. There was only one scream, but yeah, it sounded like that. 7:25 on a Saturday morning. Again, couldn't see anything. The next week, Wednesday the 27th of September, I found the footprint that I mentioned, a paw print on the track. Just had to break off there because somebody was coming past with a dog and they were trying to get to know Alfie a little bit. But anyway, as I say, I was walking down the track Wednesday the 27th of September 2023, and just on the bit I showed you, there was a large footprint facing sort of down the hill, as if something had been going down towards the ditch. I convinced myself it might have been a dog. It was large. I thought, oh no, it's a dog one. But it kind of rankled in my mind for the evening. So I went back the next morning. Luckily it was still there. And I photographed it with a little ruler that I bought, a little 6-inch ruler. And it was about 4.5 to 5 inches top to bottom. The pads didn't look like a dog's pads. However, there were visible claw marks. Now, convention tells you if you can see claws, it's not a big cat. However, if the cat is injured or if it's an elderly cat, you sometimes can. The claws don't always retract as they should do, so you can actually get visible claw marks in a big cat paw print. So I took a photo of it. I sent it off to a gentleman who runs a podcast to get his opinion, and he said, yeah, I can't say for definite whether it is or it isn't, but it definitely could be. The pads look like, they're a cat one, but yeah, I can't say either way, so it could have been. I'd love to show you the photograph, but I can't find it, unfortunately. Wherever it's gone in my files, I can't seem to locate it, but if I ever do, I will put it on as a short or something like that on my channel. But yeah, so it could have been. We'd had a bit of rain there. The previous time I was talking about, there hadn't been any rain for a few weeks, but it had rained before that Wednesday, hence why there was a footprint. And to be honest, that was the last occurrence, really, the footprint there. I had a feeling that there was a big cat around. I could just feel something, and you might say that's wishful thinking, but I had the same feeling in a different location about 15 miles away that I go past on the train quite regularly. And somebody else I'm in contact with about big cats emailed me to say that he'd seen a puma in that area, so sometimes the feelings are correct. However, after these incidents I've mentioned, September 2023, not long after that, I had a period of ill health and I couldn't get up here to this area. And when I came back, eventually, the feeling had gone, basically. I got the impression that the cat wasn't round here anymore, and I've never had any feelings that there is a big cat in this area since then, really. So either the cat has stopped using this part of its territory, or if it was an elderly cat, hence the visible claw marks in the footprint, it's probably unfortunately passed away. Not the only big cat report in the area. About probably 2 or 3 miles that way, there was a report in about 2019 of a large black cat, and about probably 15 miles or so in that direction is the area that I'm talking about, where the puma was seen by the contact of mine from the train. He was going along on the train and he could see a puma. And a few years before that, there was also a large black cat reported in that area. So there are other reports in the area. But as I say, I don't think that the cat in question is still here. But I've not revealed the exact location just in case. If you know the area, you probably know where I am. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, hopefully, in the future, perhaps another cat will use the area. We're not a million miles away from the first video when I did the Bigfoot report either. We're probably about 4 or 5 miles from there. So yeah, there's other cryptid reports in the area. So I've got a few more videos coming up. Obviously, if you're watching this in the future, they'll probably already be on the channel, but there are various places. Doncaster in South Yorkshire is on my radar. Cannock Chase is also on the radar as well. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. It is a fairly new channel as I'm doing this one in May 2025. I've only just launched the channel. I do have another channel that's on a completely different subject, and I was going to put these videos on there, but they don't really fit in with the content on there. So hence I launched a new one. But look out for future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, and take care, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.